Welcome back, everyone. This is That's a Good Card, and my name's Ya. Today, Kyle's going to help me decide which deck I should be bringing to a CEDH tournament that we're going to in San Diego called the Fish Bowl 4. Which deck will I decide? Keep on watching to find out. If you like this type of video, please like and subscribe, share it with your friends, and then also leave a comment below with which commander you think we should be talking about next. Thanks.
Welcome back, listeners, to That's a Good Card. Today, we're going to be mixing it up a little bit with a new type of video, our very first Commander Consultation. So, our plan with this episode is going to be helping Ya decide on which deck he's going to be bringing to his next tournament. He's been on the fence between a couple of decks, well, even more so than the two decks we're talking about today, to be quite frank.
I'm glad we're being honest.
I'm glad we're being honest. He's been between about 5 decks. We've got him down to a top 2, and our job today is to help him decide on one. So, without further ado, y'all, tell us a little bit about the 2 decks that we are torn between playing.
The 2 decks I am finally down to, I should say, that we have whittled it down to, is between Queen Dwarf, Magda, and the new Dino, Etali. Primal Conqueror, the new one.
Yes, the new one.
And
the one
OG
that flips
Magda.
into a massive... Yeah, OG Magda. So old Magda, new Etali.
Yes.
So OG Magda, as well as the new Etali that flips into a massive infect creature of wonders. So let's talk about where each of these decks are in the current meta, and by what I mean by that is kind of like their position in the landscape of how well these decks have been doing overall. I don't think that this is going to be something that sways you greatly, because I feel like, yeah, you're kind of an against the grain type of guy.
A little bit, yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's important for the listeners to just kind of see how these decks have been doing. And I think that, starting off hot out the gates, Magda has been really finding success recently.
Yeah, I think with Magda, I don't think many people know this, but when I first started getting into CEDH, it was the deck that was kind of the new kid on the street. Like, out of nowhere, this deck, mono red, won a tournament out of nowhere. And so I'd always thought about playing Magda, and then once I got into it, I kind of explored some other things. Never quite built a Magda list until literally like 3 weeks ago, as we were trying to decide a deck to play in this tournament that we're going to. So yeah, Magda's been on my list for probably 2 years now.
And the list that we've been seeing recently is actually a more of a control list, right? Originally, when Magda came out, it was turbo, super fast, trying to get underneath the mid-range decks. And nowadays, the Magda decks that we're seeing find success are more control heavy, right? They're toolboxes where they can kind of do everything. Now, let's get into how well these decks have been doing. So I'll kind of just list off some of the tournament results of recent ones for Magda. So we got a 2nd place out of 64, a 2nd place out of 66, a 15th out of 66 in that same tournament, a 5th out of 69, a 1st place out of 92, and another 1st place out of 96. So those were big tournaments where Magda took it all. What are your thoughts on kind of like the tournament results of Magda?
I think the biggest surprise to a lot of people, right, and myself, right, is that the passion behind the community. So obviously I joined the Discord behind this, and, in the face of Orcish Bowmaster and the One Ring and Winter mid-range like hell, right? People drawing cards and Orcish Bowmasters pinging down the board, this 2/1 dwarf is finding resiliency. And I think that that's really compelling to me. And it's like a mono red, ping you in the face, like just kind of go like, you've got to stop me. And it's doing the thing with a lot of consistency, right? Like you listed off 6 tournaments and it topped 4 of them, and almost top 4 on another one, right? One place out of it, and then made a top 16 pretty easily in all cases. So it's surprising to me how resilient, and like you're not just kind of slamming down the dwarves and kind of going for it unless you think you can kind of control it.
Yeah, so it's overall been doing really, really well. I think that it slipped into the top 10 of overall decks on top CEDH or EDH top 16 I think it's ranked 9th currently at the recording of this video, and I think it has the opportunity to hop up a couple more spots as it sees more conversion. Cool. That's Magda. Now let's talk a little bit about Etali. So Etali has seen a lot less success from a tournament perspective. It consistently is seeing a lot of top 16s, but as I was kind of scrolling through all the different recent tournaments, there haven't been any top 4 conversions for this deck. Does that concern you in any way?
Yes and no. Obviously, you want to do well, but at the same time, like you said, I kind of like to go against the grain. Obviously, it has seen some success. I mean, I don't think I didn't hear about this deck until Comedian brought it up in his kind of like channels and play. And so it definitely is, it's appealing to me because it is a big dinosaur, right? Like that's at the end of the day, I would be lying if I said that it wasn't for the fact that it does something really cool, something really outside of the normal meta, playing everybody else's deck, kind of like Paco Halden. But doing it a little bit faster, right? Like you don't have to play out both commanders. You can play out one commander and like it does its thing pretty well.
Yeah, and the second that thing hits the board, boom. And that kind of leads into the next part we're going to talk about, which is the good. So let's talk about the Magic Christmas Dreamland, the good parts of these decks. Like, why do people pick up these decks in the first place? Right? So let's talk about those dopamine rushes. And for Magda, the dopamine rush is getting to that 5 treasure mark, baby. Being able to activate Magda and either win the game through your activation or kind of just grab whatever piece that you need that's going to put you in a position to win the game. How do you feel about, like, scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate the dopamine rush of getting to that 5 treasure mark on Magda?
I think with Magda, that's like an 8 or 9 for me. Sometimes a 10, right? Like I think getting to 10 treasures, like that's like my heart sitting down and my heart is like 144.
Yeah, that's a dub, baby.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that's kind of like the Magic Christmas Dreamline for Magda. It's like once you get those treasures, you're really feeling unstoppable. And I think that I would also rate it in that same category of like that's like a 9, right? That's a heavy hitting rush, and the edging that you get from being at 2 treasures, 3 treasures, or hopping up from 1 to 5, right? Like that's the dopamine rush that you're looking for as a Magda player, right? Just seeing those numbers count up, those dice ticking up, those treasures, the physical treasure tokens that you have start stacking up in line.
It's so good. The ability to, a lot like Sisse, right, which is another deck that is winning at a really high rate, to be able to win on the stack, right, on top of everybody else, like that's the part that is like such a rush. Like you've set the trap, you're getting things going, and now everybody's trying to 3v1 you, and you know that you're going to somehow still be able to just win on the stack without letting anything resolve to win the game right then and there. That's really cool. I've done it once since I've put this list together, and it's like, not gonna lie, I fumbled through it. I was like, I felt really bad, but like it did its thing.
But you got there.
And I'm like kind of inept at figuring the line. And it was like, she still just like grabbed my hand and was just like led me down the way. And I love that.
Yep. I think that's a great descriptor of, the dopamine rush that Magda brings. Now let's talk about the good for Etali, which is that big dino hitting the board. ETB trigger on the stack. How would you rate this this massive dinosaur hitting the board? What kind of dopamine rush are you feeling from that?
This one's a little bit less, but still pretty cool. Like, because you're gonna get to flip
interesting.
a little bit less, just because. Shoot, how do I put this? Like, Etali presents like a real puzzle, right? And so it's like a different dopamine rush. It's not like that pure adrenaline dump. It's more of like you're always excited. It's like opening up presents that you didn't think you were going to get. Like you saw one gift under the tree,
gifts.
And then all of a sudden you get 3 other gifts.
3 other
And sometimes it's
so they're bonus Christmas gifts.
Right.
Yeah, there you go.
Sometimes it's like, you hit like a counter spell or like a ritual, but then sometimes you get to hit their, like, I don't know, Displacer Kitten, and you're like, oh, okay.
And then just win the game. No, I guess that's more of the dopamine rush, right? Is when you finally see everybody flip their cards and you flip into something that is just absolutely filthy.
the dopamine rush isn't so much casting Etali. It's when everybody else flips their card and you start listening, you're looking at your card and then you look at the person next to you, but then you hear your other two opponents go, oh no, that right there.
Okay, so it's okay. So it has a little bit of the waiting for your opponents to sink their shoulders.
Yes.
And the dread.
Just
the overall dread that comes from your opponents flipping over a card. And sometimes it's not just the card being good for you. Sometimes you're flipping win cons. And now that person is just screwed.
Bone.
Yeah, they're just absolutely screwed. They'll flip into a part of their win con. It's the only thing that they need to win the game. And now it's exiled. And now it's the Etali players. And the dinosaur can do whatever the dinosaur wants with it.
I think most people that have ever played Red and played a Ragavan knows like that hit. It's like, sweet, I got somebody's Mana Crypt. I got their Soul Ring. Except you get to do that 2 more times. And the person, and the best part is when they flip their own card, right? You've now flipped your card.
Yep.
And now they're looking at their own hand to see if they have an answer for their own card that they just flipped for you. Like, that feels really good.
They're panicking. They have to fight themselves.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the bad. So let's talk about kind of the parts of the deck that's going to be the feel bads for these decks and kind of see which one you think feels worse. So let's start off with Magda, and I talked to one of my friends who plays Magda, and something that really grinds their gears, what really gets on their nerves, is something you kind of touched on, which is when your commander gets removed for quote-unquote no reason.
Yeah.
Right? So early on as Magda, since it's just a 2/1, there's a lot of things that can just kill your commander. You may not be presenting a win. You might not even be close. Hell, you could have mulliganed to 3, played your Jeweled Lotus in your land, cast your Magda, and you have 1 card in hand, and guess what? Just because it's the only target on the board, it's dying.
Yep.
Right? And that's something that you have to live with as a Magda player. So how do you think you handle getting your commander kind of hated out?
You have to know that going into this deck, you have to play smart, right? I think that the learning part for me is learning when to play Magda. It has been.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I wait too long to play her, but that's okay, right? It's like, okay, at least like it wasn't getting removed for no reason. I was still able to do the things I need to do, create treasures, create the resources, right? Build that trap, if you will. Play out the stacks pieces or artifact hate. And then even then you go and you're looking at like the Christmas tree and all of a sudden somebody goes, nah, I'm just going to go ahead and bolt that thing.
Yeah.
Those things are just going to happen. That is the variance. That is the salt.
Just on a personal level.
Yeah.
Like, does that kind of thing like really affect your gameplay? Like, is that something where you're going to get tilted really easily and not be able to finish out the game in like playing well?
No, I don't get tilted that much. I think everybody deals with salt, right? You get a little salty, right? Like, obviously everybody's going to feel a little bit of salt, but like it's also understandable. And I like think of myself as a reasonable person, and that's where knowing the board state and knowing like, hey, if you remove that, I think, pointing out that Sisse is also on a similar game plan and she has a board, and also I'm playing treasures or I'm playing artifacts. If she plays a dockside, I hope you have removal for Sisse and her dockside that she's going to try to start bouncing and flickering.
Yeah, and unfortunately, as much as you can try your best politic, a lot of times Magda's kind of in this place now. It's because it's seen so much success. It's just going to get killed no matter what. They're not going to listen to you.
No.
Same thing happened with Kinnan, right?
Oh, yeah,
it's
for
like
sure.
Kinnan and Magda, they're these tiny little commanders, and they get removed consistently. And like they get removed way more than something like a Timna, right?
Oh, for sure.
They get removed way more.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So it seems like that won't affect you too much. But let's talk about the bad/worst feel you can get when you play Etali, which is your Etali getting countered. So you finally worked up enough red mana for you to cast your big old dinosaur, and wah, 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 someone says, I have a response, and counters your Etali. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. So how do you think that kind of stacks up to the hate that Magda receives?
I think it feels a little bit worse potentially. I also think that in games that has happened, I think something that I should say right off the bat is also I like to try to make sure I take ownership in any situation like that where it's like, okay, I mulligan poorly, right? Like, oh, I saw a like turn 3 Etali, right? Like, oh yeah, like they're gonna be boned when this hits. And like maybe I kept a hand that I shouldn't if I read the pod and you're like, I'm the only non-blue player in a pod full of blue. Guess what? They're probably all looking at me like, we're not letting that dinosaur do shit, right? And so you've got to be able to know that maybe instead of doing that, you need to mulligan better, right? Like, yeah, definitely it feels bad, right?
Yeah.
The salt's there. It can really...
Or just time better.
Right?
Yeah, or just say, hey, I'm playing against these 3 blue players. They haven't really done much. They all have mana up. Maybe now is not
the time
to cast my Seething Song and then cast my Etali.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I like that a lot. So you kind of see it as a learning moment of, hey, if I got countered, like, I could have been making a mistake.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's salt and removal is going to be a part of it, and you just got to learn to find your window.
Cool. All right, you ready to move on to probably what I'd consider to be the most important like differentiator between these two decks?
Yeah, go. Let's do it.
You ready for it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So when I think about these two decks, just on a overall level, like a generalistic level of when you're looking at decks and deciding what to play, I think the biggest difference between these decks is one deck is kind of focusing on the known, while the other deck kind of thrives in the chaos of the unknown.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So Magda has some really, really tight, well thought out lines, and the deck is created for Magda to do their thing.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Whereas Etali, on the other hand, it's kind of just throwing up Hail Marys and just praying that something will kind of fall into your lap, right? So I think that this is kind of where we have to talk about, like, you as a person, yeah. Are you afraid of the unknown, or are you kind of the type that's just okay to just thrive in the chaos?
I've been telling people a lot in my personal life outside of Magic that the chaos of the moment of an event, of something that we haven't talked about here, is that we used to work together, and we used to work together. I've been in the rock climbing sphere for a long, long time, like 20 years now. And so working in climbing and going on climbing trips and adventures, like that's the whole state of being of my 20s, was like not knowing where I was going to be on any given week. How was I going to get home because I don't have enough money, right? Like that was how I lived my life for a while. So playing a card game where like there's a little bit of unknown, like, yeah, I kind of really enjoy that, but I also love being able to execute a good plan. So yeah, I definitely see these two big differences, and I'm personally okay with Etali's randomness from everybody else, but I also think that Etali's list is packed full of things that helps enable Etali's plan further.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the focus of the deck, like, there still is a point to the deck.
No,
don't
sure.
get me wrong. I understand that Etali still has a plan. It's just one of those plans that's kind of dynamic, right? So I was thinking about this. It's like, yeah, when you go on a vacation, are you the type of person who plans the itinerary and is like, okay, we're doing breakfast at 9, then we're going to walk on the beach for 2 hours, and then we're going to meet at a tiki bar for lunch at 12, and then we're going to go here. Is that the type of person you are? Or are you kind of just like, I'm going to go get breakfast, I'm going to walk around, ooh, skydiving, okay, I'll go skydiving. like, what are your vacations like? And this will kind of give me a good feel of whether or not, one of these decks might be the right one for you.
Okay, fun story time. Allie, that's my partner. If you're listening, you know how this, where this is going to go. My partner is the person who plans everything. She plans out. She's like sitting me down a month and a half, 2 months before our trip to get us to plan out like as many things as is possible, right? Like that's her. That's her thing.
Down to the 30-minute mark, down to the 15-minute mark,
yeah,
down to the 1 minute mark. What do we?
And then I'm the asshole who gets us all the way to, I don't know, let's just say, Paris. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, that's the train we need to get on. Let's get on that right now. She's like, no, I don't think that's the train. And then the next thing I know, I'm on the train. I turn around and the doors close. And now I'm hurtling away from her in a foreign country, going on a train that she should be on, but she's not. I'm not saying that this happened, but it could have happened.
Oh, yeah. This is a made up story, right?
Right.
Right, everybody?
So that should give you an idea of our vacations.
All right. Your consult, Kyle, is writing down notes on a clipboard about this, just so that you know.
Yeah.
Taking copious notes.
Couples therapy.
All right, I think we can move on from this one. Yeah. Yeah, the commander therapy. All right, let's move on to the next question. Let's talk about the Achilles heels for each one of these decks and kind of your thoughts on which one's easier to navigate as the pilot. So the first one is going to be Magda's Achilles heel, which seems to be opposition agent, right? Magda's really dependent on activating Magda. And if you aren't able to search your library, or if you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar searching your library and someone plays an oppo, it can be absolutely brutal. So what are your thoughts on kind of how Magda plays around oppo and the difficulty of that?
I think that if Magda is left with only 5 treasures and like 1 activation, Magda can be kind of cooked. That's where it's probably the saltiest feeling. And so if you're going to do it off of 1 activation, you've got to be able to tell the board like what you're kind of looking for, or looking at who can potentially generate 3 mana out of nowhere, right? Like, does somebody have a black open for a dark ritual into an opposition agent? So you've got to know the board. Mm-hmm. If I'm already in the midst of trying to win, like somehow I've gotten to start generating infinite mana, then it's fine, whatever. Opposition, again, like I can win on the stack right then and there. It's when you only have like 1, maybe 2 activations, and like they slow play it and then let you only get like half of your like 1 of your activations out, and then they get you on that second one, like that's where you get really hosed. So yeah, like opposition agent can really hose you, and so you've also got to have removal for it, like let it resolve. And then with your activation still on the stack, you hopefully hit you have one of your removal cards.
Lightning bolt.
Right.
Just anything.
Right.
Anything.
Right.
Yeah. Or the sniper. I like that guy too. Oof. I'm not sure if your Magdalist runs it, but that one, the channel sniper, I love that card.
That is a good
Chef's
one.
kiss.
That's a good
Chef's
one.
kiss. All right. So moderate to pretty high difficulty navigating that situation is what it sounds like. Let's talk about Etali's Achilles heel, which is, unfortunately, Dranith Magistrate, right? It seems like that card really, really shuts down Etali, because, man, does that deck really focus on getting Etali out and then starting to, blow through copies of Etali to find a win. How do you feel in comparison to, Magda and Oppo? Like, where are you seeing piloting Etali with a Dranith out?
I think Dranith is a little bit trickier, but luckily, I think Dranith is a little bit trickier. I kind of feel like that, at least. Dranith or Linvala.
Editor's note, we're talking about Lavinia, not Linvala.
Linvala also really hoses you.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah.
Right, Linvala really hoses you because it doesn't let you cast any 0. Like, if it was cast for free, then it's just going to counter everything, right?
Yep.
And so those can be just as tricky. I mean, you're also in is it Gruul? Red, green.
Yep, Gruul.
And so you also are running you're running a good suite of removal in that as well, right? Knowing that these are the creatures that are going to be kind of in your way.
Yeah.
And so I think that they're both like the same, right? They're both stopping the plan quite a bit. Where I think the Dranith is like maybe easier to deal with is probably depending on when Dranith comes down, it's everybody's problem, right? Everybody else's problem. So now all of a sudden it's like a 3v1. And so like...
That's true. I would counter by saying that like Blue Farm isn't that affected by it.
True.
Same with like a Rogsai. Like sometimes those can slide underneath the Dranith. Sometimes, in response to the Dranith coming out, the Rograk is just getting sacrificed to do something else,
Yeah.
So I think that some of the really powerful decks in the format aren't really affected by Dranith as nearly as much as something like a Tivit or a Etali, right?
Yep.
And a lot of times too, let's make the point that in this specific scenario, a lot of times Magda is out before Dranith hits the board, right? Just because Magda is a 2-cost commander. a lot of times a Dranith will hit the board and Magda's already out. And whether or not that's good play by the Dranith player, I don't know, because you're kind of king making a little bit. Not really, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Okay, cool. So just like overall, you think that navigating opposition agent with Magda is a little easier than dealing with Dranith and Etali?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's kind of like, you know what's going to happen. You've got to be really aware of it. You have to have a spidey sense, an opposition sense.
My oppo sense.
My oppo sense. Yeah. You got to start developing that, right? Like, I think anybody that plays that, Magda or Sisei, right, has to kind of know that, and like you're looking for removal if that comes into play.
All right, cool. So we're moving on to the most important question, which is a completely obscure, random question, but I have made some calculations on it.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
So you're just going to have to trust me on this, but it's going to help us make a decision at the end, okay?
All right.
So I'm going to pose to you 2 cards. You're playing against a mystery opponent, okay?
Okay.
Your mystery opponent is going to play these cards. Which one are you more afraid of?
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So your mystery opponent plays a 4/4 flyer for 4 mana. But this 4/4 flyer for 4 mana has a couple of abilities. The first ability says, at the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card.
Okay.
But it also has another ability that says, at the beginning of your end step, discard your hand. So it's a 4/4 for 4. It's a flyer. At the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card. At the beginning of your end step, discard your entire hand. All right? You got that one memory banked, y'all?
Yeah, I think so.
What's your fear level at right now of this when it hits the board? Scale of 1 to 10.
I'm like actively trying to think about like what card this actually could be, but
it is a real card, and people in the comments, if you know, great. I love you for knowing this.
At first I thought it was Crom for sure, but then I was like, no, it's not Crom.
No, but then it has a really bad ability.
Right? Yeah, and you're like discard your entire hand at the end. But like, can I ask what colors they're in, or is that cheating?
No information. All right, just how scared are you? Just on a scare factor. This hits the board. How scared? Moderate.
Low? Yeah, because
moderate.
Like CEDH, you're scared of things you don't know. Like,
okay,
right?
Moderate scare.
Yeah, that's moderately scary.
That's true. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the second mystery opponent. Second mystery opponent taps for 5 colorless mana and plays an artifact.
5 colorless.
So it's a 5 mana artifact.
Wow, okay.
Okay. ETB. It deals 2 damage to any target.
Okay.
And it also has another ability. You can tap it and add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool.
It's a rather inefficient card. I mean,
to be fair, I don't think either of these cards are very good. What's your scare factor? ETB 2 damage coming anywhere, and they get mana.
I'm gonna go. I mean, I'm a little less scared of this one, to be quite honest with you.
Okay.
This, if I had to rank the scare, I would have put the first card at like a 7, and then I would put this one at like maybe a 4. A 4.
Okay.
A 4.
A 4. So it's not that scary. You're like 2 damage. 2 damage is nothing. It's just 2 damage and a mana rock.
Yeah, it's 2 damage and mana rock, and you paid 5 for it. I'm questioning your. I'm questioning. Like the 4/4 for 4.
You're not gonna question the guy.
4/4 for 4.
The guy who plays a card that says discard your hand.
Maybe he wants to play out of his graveyard, like, and he needs to get rid of the Dranith that's out on the table for my Etali just as much as anybody.
All right, let's do a. Okay, that was wonderful. So let's kind of do a reveal of what these cards are. So the first one was Avaricious Dragon.
Avaricious Dragon.
Yeah, it's a 4/4 for 4 flyer, right? It's a creature dragon. So Avaricious Dragon. The other card I brought was Meteorite.
Okay. I knew that one sounded familiar.
Okay. Yeah. So my thought process behind these, do you want to guess what my thought process was? Of which one you're more scared of?
Hit me with it.
Okay, so I was like, okay, if you're a dinosaur, you're afraid of meteorites because it killed the dinosaurs. And if
you're a dwarf, you're afraid of a dragon? Because you know, like The Hobbit.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know, there's Smog the dragon, and it was the avaricious Smog.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
Isn't
that
a thing?
That's a good. Oh, that's a good reference.
It's probably a different one.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you. That's yeah.
Good.
So I brought up those two cards to see which one you'd be more afraid of. You were more afraid of the dragon.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Which is very dwarf-like of you, I would say. So that definitely gives an edge to Magda. All right. Sorry, there's too many laughs in this portion of the episode. This is my favorite
wonderful.
segment.
This was wonderful. That was wonderful.
All right, let's go to our closing segment, which is our final thoughts. So let me pull up my clipboard here. I've taken notes.
Excellent.
And I'll tell you which ones have been in favor. So it looks like in terms of stats, so tournament stats of these cards, right? The stats favor Magda. Okay, so we got 1 point Magda.
Yeah.
In terms of the good, the great feeling, the dopamine rush. The dopamine rush, you said, favored Magda.
Yeah, probably.
Let's talk about the bad. The bad, we said, it favors Etali. So that's 1 point Etali.
Yep.
2 points Magda. We talked about the unknown factor, the X factor. Just you as a person, whether or not you plan vacations or not. And that favored Etali. So now we're 2 and 2.
Uh-oh.
All right. Then we got to the Achilles heel. And the Achilles heel, you favored Magda. And then finally, which was going to be the tie,
Breaker.
potentially,
Yeah.
the random card, you were more afraid of dragons than meteorites, which favors Magda. So final score for me looks like 4 points for Magda and 2 points for Etali. So my prescription, it's going to be Magda. Now let's talk about what actually matters, which is your final thoughts, yeah. Did anything we bring up today kind of sway you from one deck to the other? And be completely honest. Look, just because I prescribe Magda doesn't mean that I won't be seeing you pilot Etali in this next tournament. So what are your thoughts after this conversation?
To be quite honest, this was actually really helpful. I definitely have been floating a lot. Kyle was like, dude, your attention span, when we were talking about getting ready for this, was like, you're all over the place. And I have been a little bit, especially since I stopped playing Najila a little bit. Like, I went through a time where I played all the good decks, a lot of the good decks, minus Blue Farm, right? And so I realized, like, I really kind of wanted to push myself. I think Etali would really push me, right? Knowing as much of the meta as is possible. But I think that Magda has just really clicked for me. There have been games where I'm just like really about this little dwarf and going, yeah, I'm just gonna be able to. I'm gonna win.
You're cooking.
I'm cooking. Like, especially when your opponent before you plays a Blood Moon for you, you're like, I'm winning this game. Like, thanks, dude.
Say less.
Say less.
Thanks for the king make. Yeah.
Thanks, because I'm gonna go ahead and play out a no rod, and nobody's playing that Tippett and Marnius up there. They're not doing anything this game.
Awesome. And I think like a big thing as well was just talking about the good, right? I think that people should really focus on playing decks that make them happy, right? That give them the dopamine rush. Like, you want to have fun playing your deck. So immediately once we got to that point and you said that dopamine rush of getting to your treasures felt better than Etali flips, which is funny. Like, anecdotally speaking, if I had to choose between those, I would say Etali flips all day. Like, I'm a gambling man.
Yeah.
I love to gamble, so I'm just like, yeah, give me those Etali flips. Let's see what this randomness creates. Like, I'm ready for it. Like, I'm all for that. I think that dopamine rush is way better than the slow edge towards getting to your treasures for the activation. But, you know, to each their own. And I think that if you really enjoy that those Magda activations and they bring you joy, fucking play the deck, you know? Like, hell yeah. Like, play that deck. Play what's going to make you happy.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. I think that's what CEDH has always been about. It's just playing like really fun, highly optimized decks. And I think that I've always kind of been, it's funny, Colin and I've been talking a lot about how we think he's secretly just like a control player, even though he loves Jund, which is a Sans Blue deck, right?
That's
so,
true.
You know, you gotta sometimes just lean into what you think you like just works for you. And for me, I've always been a fan of red burn. Every format has some kind of red burn, and so while this isn't quite red burn, it's pretty close. It kind of
some things that end up doing it. Yeah.
And it simplifies some things and it complicates some other things, and I kind of really like that, and I kind of want to take on the extra challenge of going into a tournament, sans blue, and see how that goes.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. So, end of the day, Ya's selection was Magda. That's a good card.
That's a good card.
Had to say it once for the podcast. We didn't say it once, but Magda, that's a good card for sure. Meteorite, Avaricious Dragon.
Ooh.
The jury's out on those ones. Watch someone in the comment just be like a crazy Avaricious Dragon stand, and there's like some infinite combo or some super good combo with it. I don't know. I think it'd be really funny. Anyway, thank you all for listening today. We had a lot of fun doing our first Commander consultation. So I think we have plans for us to flip the script here and have Ya do a consultation for me as well, because I've been really torn between a couple of decks as well. I might be inclined to step out of my comfort zone if I'm convinced. So stay tuned for that episode. Thank you all for listening today. Please check the description down below for our link tree, as well as links to our Discord, so you can find and join our community where we play games and just generally chat about CEDH all the time. So if you're looking for a CEDH community, hop in our Discord and come say hi. Thank you all for listening today. Don't forget to comment and like and subscribe, and have a great day.